Welcome. Unfortunately, many people are in the habit of disposing of their waste indiscriminately, and it is particularly bad for our environment when hazardous waste gets mixed with other waste in our black dustbin bags intended for the municipal landfill. So in this video, we are going to explain what hazardous waste is and how to manage it. Check out this view. Welcome. My name is Sean McGregor of ecoleges environmental consultants based in Mpumalanga, South Africa. Not a very pretty Mpumalanga today, but we're on a mission to empower all South Africans to protect their environment through the correct interpretation and application of our environmental legislation. So if you want to learn how our environmental law applies to you so that you can avoid unnecessary and costly mistakes, if you want to increase your knowledge and skills to reduce your reliance on external consultants, if you're in need of mentorship, or you just want to earn CPD points for your professional registration, then you'll want to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to click on the bell notification icon so that you can be notified the moment we upload a new video. And if you do know of anyone else who can benefit from these videos, you can help us spread this message by liking them. Thank you. So let's get started. The title of this video is What to Do with Your Hazardous Waste. Now let's start at the beginning, and that is with the definition of waste. I've taken the definition from the amended National Environmental Management Waste Act, and I'll include a link to that act in the description below. Now the definition is quite lengthy, so I'm going to have to read it to you. Waste means any substance, material, or object that is unwanted, rejected, abandoned, discarded, or disposed of, or that is intended or required to be discarded or disposed of by the holder of that substance, material, or object. Whether or not such substance or material or object can be reused, recycled, or recovered. Okay? So it doesn't matter if it can be reused, recycled, or recovered. It doesn't matter if it possesses that potential. It is still waste if it is unwanted, rejected, abandoned, discarded, or disposed of. Then comes a big and in the definition. And includes all wastes as defined in Schedule 3 of this Act. So that's quite important. I interpret it then as if it isn't included in Schedule 3, it isn't waste. So it has to be unwanted, and it has to be included in Schedule 3 of the amended National Environmental Management Waste Act. Okay, that was paragraph A. Paragraph B makes provision for if it is not included. Let me read it to you. Any other substance, material, or object that is not included in Schedule 3 that may be defined as a waste by the Minister by notice in a gazette. Okay, then comes a big but in the definition of waste, and these are the exclusions. Any waste or portion of waste referred to in paragraphs A and B, which I've just read to you, ceases to be waste once an application for its reuse, recycling, or recovery has been approved, or after such approval, once it is or has been reused, recycled, or recovered. 2, where approval is not required once a waste is or has been reused, recycled, or recovered. And then 3, where the Minister has, in terms of Section 74, exempted any waste or portion of waste generated by a particular process from the definition of waste. And then finally 4, or where the Minister has, in the prescribed manner, excluded any waste stream or a portion of a waste stream from the definition of waste. Okay, so just to reiterate, waste ceases to be waste once it has been or is reused, recycled, or recovered. And that is why these activities, I presume, are specifically excluded from the definition of a holder of waste. Now, a holder of waste is a person who imports, exports, generates, stores, accumulates, transports, treats, processes, or disposes of waste. Obviously, then a person cannot be a holder of waste once that waste ceases to be waste, such as when it is reused, recycled, or recovered. And just out of interest, waste doesn't cease to be waste once it has been treated, because treatment is merely a process undertaken to minimize the impact of that waste on the environment prior to further use or disposal. Okay. So we've just arrived at our destination, that is the local municipal landfill. Now, if you go through Schedule 3, you'll notice that they differentiate waste between two broad categories. You basically get hazardous waste and general waste. General waste would be non-hazardous waste. I'm not going to go through these lists with you because they're quite long. You can do that in your own time. But I just want to remind you then that I am including a link to that Act, the amended National Environmental Management Waste Act, including Schedule 3, in the description below. Now, although I'm not going to cover it in this video, I'll also include a link to the National Waste Information Regulations of 2012, because Annexure 3 of those regulations also define different kinds of general and hazardous waste. It's very useful. So refer to both those pieces of legislations for the definition of waste types, specifically general and hazardous waste. Right, so general waste means waste that does not pose an immediate hazard or threat to health or the environment. And it includes domestic waste, business waste, building and demolition waste, inert waste, and any waste classified as non-hazardous in terms of the Waste Classification and Management Regulations of 2013. And, big and, it includes non-hazardous substances, materials, or objects. Okay. So this definition is quite important in that it acknowledges that domestic waste, for example, contains both hazardous and non-hazardous components. And in order for it to qualify as general waste, then it must exclude those hazardous substances, materials, or objects. So what is domestic waste? Well, domestic waste means waste excluding hazardous waste, emanating wholly or mainly from premises used for residential, educational, health sector, recreational or sports purposes. And it includes, and they give three types or three kinds of domestic waste. It includes garden and parks wastes, food waste, and municipal waste. Compare that with the definition for business waste. Business waste means waste emanating from premises used wholly or mainly for retail, commercial, wholesale, entertainment, and government administration purposes. And then it goes on to include a whole list of different kinds of business waste compared to the three kinds of domestic waste I described earlier, including garden and parks wastes, municipal waste, and food waste. Now, included in the list of business wastes is item 8B, which refers to electrical and electronic equipment not otherwise specified in Category A. So what is Category A? Well, if you go to Schedule 3, you'll notice Category A is hazardous waste. Category B is general waste. So what they're implying is that electrical and electronic equipment contain both a Category A and a Category B component, a hazardous and non-hazardous component. So please, if you are going to exclude any electrical or electronic equipment into your black dustbin bag, then it must exclude those hazardous components if it is going to be handled as general waste. And that brings us to the definition of hazardous waste. Hazardous waste means any waste that contains organic or inorganic elements or compounds that may, owing to the inherent physical, chemical, or toxicological characteristics of that waste, have a detrimental impact on health and the environment, and includes hazardous substances, materials, or objects within business waste, residue stockpiles, and residue deposits. Now, I don't like this definition of hazardous waste because it limits or restricts the definition to business waste, residue stockpiles, and residue deposits, when we all know that domestic waste also includes hazardous components. In other words, if you are going to view the definition of hazardous waste in isolation, then it excludes domestic waste. Fortunately, however, if domestic waste is going to qualify as general waste, as I mentioned earlier, it will need to exclude those hazardous components, whether they be substances, materials, or objects, and that is provided in the definition of general waste. So they would have to exclude, for example, those items identified in Category A, like 14B, the hazardous portion of wastes from electrical and electronic equipment, and 14E, wastes from discarded batteries and accumulators. So once you've acknowledged and then identified the different hazardous substances, materials, or objects in your household, the question is, how does one manage them? Before I go into answering that question, I just want to read to you section 17.2. Any person who sells a product, sorry, this is of the Act, section 17.2 of the Act. Any person who sells a product that may be used by the public and is likely to result in the generation of hazardous waste must take reasonable steps to inform the public of the impact of the waste on health and the environment. Okay, so read the label, read the bottle, whatever it is, particularly if it has the potential to produce hazardous waste. The supplier or manufacturer has an obligation to inform you of those impacts so that you can manage your waste properly, accordingly. Okay. Right, so hazardous waste is still waste. So any of the provisions provided in the Act relating to waste management include hazardous waste, including section 16. Okay, section 16 relates to the general duty in respect of waste management. So let me give you an example. If you want to mix your eggs, instead of buying an electronic mixer, buy one of those handheld operated devices. In that way, you are going to refuse or avoid the generation of hazardous waste once that device is no longer needed, wanted, or useful. And then, let's say, for example, you've got arthritis, so you can't buy the handheld operated device, that mechanical thingy, and you need to go for an electronic device or equipment. Then don't buy a massive piece of equipment, just buy a small handheld operated machine. And then you can also take it one step further to comply with item 2. If you recall, with such generation can't be avoided, you've got arthritis in your hands, you need an electronic device, then to reduce the amount of waste generated, including hazardous waste. So keep the device smaller and use rechargeable batteries as opposed to regularly replacing cheap batteries. And in that way, you will reduce the amount of hazardous waste that one generates. Okay. All right, let's go on. Item 3 of section 16. So now we've avoided or refused to generate hazardous waste. We've reduced the amount of waste that will be generated. Item 3 reads, then to take all reasonable steps to reuse, recycle and recover waste. Now I say that with a little bit of apprehension. Yes, it's written here in law and it is referring to waste, but it might not always be practical when it comes to hazardous waste. Okay, I want to read section 17 of the Act to you. A person who undertakes an activity involving the reuse of a waste must ensure that the reuse is less harmful to the environment than its disposal. Okay, it isn't entirely applicable what I'm about to say, but you don't really want to reuse a container that was used to hold a hazardous chemical for a water bottle. Okay, so although this isn't written directly in section 17, it refers more to the environment. You also don't want to reuse something that will end up being harmful to your or your family's health. Okay, something to bear in mind. Item 4 of section 16, and eventually where waste must be disposed of, to ensure that the waste is treated and disposed of in an environmentally sound manner. This does not mean packing it in your black dustbin bag and letting it head off to the municipal landfill. Especially not ours, okay? These sites are not geared up to handle hazardous waste, trust me. In conclusion, I urge you to go to your local municipality and try and find out the different sites that will accept the different kinds of hazardous waste, especially those that are produced within a common household. And I realize most of us are probably not going to get any answers, but do something, Google it, go to the supplier. It's about time they start taking responsibility for how their products or where their products end up, particularly since they're not selling you something that's going to last a lifetime. Okay, I want to read section 18 to you. Section 18 of the Act enables the minister to specify extended, sorry, I'm not reading it, I think I summarized it. Section 18 of the Act enables the minister to specify extended producer responsibility measures to responsible persons of identified products. Okay, so just do your best so that it can be disposed of properly and it doesn't end up here. Because I'm telling you, this is not lined and all this hazardous stuff within here is just leaking through the groundwater into the town and the valley below. Right, On that positive note, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really do enjoy making these videos for you, and I just sincerely appreciate the support. If you have joined the MPU and Corsi tiers of our membership program, you'll receive an additional video. We actually identify those waste management activities that need to be licensed. If they don't need to be licensed, then they need to comply with the norms and standards. We also introduce you to the Waste Classification and Management Regulations of 2013, compelling waste generators to identify their waste, that is, establish whether it is hazardous or not. Otherwise, if you haven't joined our membership program yet, check it out on Patreon. If you're looking for an environmental consultant to help you with a once-off project, you're welcome to visit our website. Otherwise, check out our previous video. I think it's up here. That was section 24G, dealing with the legal recourse to lawfully continue with an unlawful activity. Our next one over here to my right, your left-hand side, we start a new series called Call of Duty. We start identifying our legal obligations, our responsibilities to protect our environment, our country from harm or damage. Otherwise, subscribe, click on the bell notification icon, like the video if you know of anyone else who can benefit. Thank you, keep strong, and God bless.